Hey everybody, what's up? Today we're going to listen to the classic Cannibal Corpse album Vile and the Almost album Created to Kill. Of course, we all know the story that Geroge Fisher replaced Chris Barnes in Cannibal Corpse right around 96. And Cannibal had already started to record Created to Kill. The demos were done. And, they had to get rid of Chris Barnes. They decided to move on. The story is well documented. It was not an amicable split. And George stepped in and, absolutely killed it, in my opinion. And so Scott Burns, the legendary producer at Morrisound, just wrote a book, which I'm planning on reading, and I'm going to do a video about it, about the book, my thoughts on it. And they were talking about the whole process of recording Created to Kill. And there was a Metal Injection article about it, and I read it. And the name of Scott Burns' book, A Life in Death Metal, 1987 through 1997, talks about it pretty much in depth. And I decided that let's settle this once and for all. Let's listen to Created to Kill. Let's listen to Vile. The song we're going to listen to, of course, is the classic Devoured by Vermin. There's obviously versions of this song with Chris have been out for a while, but maybe a lot of you guys haven't heard it, or you probably heard it a million times. But let me know in the comments what you think is better. But anyway, let's listen to this song. Obviously, the mastered version of the Cannibal Corpse version of Vile is going to sound better because it went through full production. And that's the luxury of doing a full release, is that you've done the demos before that. So that being said, let's get into it and let's listen to Devoured by Vermin with Chris Barnes from Created to Kill. All right, here we go. Pretty ambitious for 1995, 1996. Vocals sound pretty mean. Chris was a good vocalist. And it makes it a little more personable that Chris wrote these lyrics too. Different cadence to the chorus. And there's a lot of growth there between the bleeding to Vile, Created to Kill. I don't think it sounds bad at all. Heavy. That's Cannibal at their best right there. It's catchy. It's so heavy. It just grinds. But it's like got this really cool hook to it. Heavy. Crazy to hear the chorus sound so different. Because that was such a huge hook in the vinyl version. Okay. My thoughts are this. Chris sounds pretty good. You know, it's so strange to hear the vocal cadence different. I've heard this before, but I never really paid attention to it. I mean, not to say that it's bad, but, you know, the first proper release of that track is just freaking awesome. And Chris's version's not bad. I mean, it's cool to see or to know that Chris wrote the lyrics to the song, and that's vocally his vision on it. You know, what a leap forward from, you know, the previous album, The Bleeding, musically. Cannibal was definitely trying to push the envelope and push the limits. And, you know, on that album, we had Paul Mazurkiewicz on the drums, of course, Alex Libster on the bass, you know, Rob Barrett on guitar, and Jack Owen on guitar, and obviously Chris Barnes on vocals on that version of the song. And I think that, you know, George's style started to suit the band more, the more rhythmically complicated that it got. And I think their older albums with Chris have kind of almost like a black metal kind of vibe to it, where it wasn't like a distinct, I mean, it was death metal, but it still had a lot of the thrashier elements and a lot of some of the black metal kind of vibe to it too, if you will. But let's move on and listen to the Devoured by Vermin, the Vile version. All right, here we go. Devoured by Vermin. There you have it right there. Right off the bat. It seems like George had the ability to keep up with the band. Still does. So much just more intense. It's almost like a rat eating your insides. I mean, the production, what it is, but, you know, for the time and the era, it sounds killer. Just like more relentless. Like there's more intensity. Like a rat eating your eyeballs out of your eye socket. The Cannibal Groove. It's like they took the criminally insane drum idea and like ran with it. You know, this fast hi-hat, you know, singular snare, or using the ride cymbal instead of the hi-hat sometimes. Cool. That's one of my favorite elements of Cannibal Corpse. Super heavy. I don't know about you, but that sounds a lot cooler than eeeeee. Of course, this version has a guitar solo. So melodic. Just joking. It doesn't have any melody. It's not supposed to. That's why we love it. Okay, there you have it. In my opinion, without a shadow of a doubt, The Vile version featuring George sounds much better. Of course, that album was brought to a full production. I understand that it's going to sound better, but removing the production quality from the equation, just the delivery, the cadence, George, knocked it out of the park. And I don't know if anybody's seen the Centuries of Torment DVD where he sits there and says, I had to take a piss and think about what I was doing and go back out there and go, all right, this is my Hollywood moment. We're going to, go for it all the way. And that scream, that he does, that way that song starts like that, proved a point and made a statement that, they had found the right guy for the job. And, and to Chris's credit, that's big shoes to fill. And, to walk into a band that's well established, that's at the time, one of the bands on the cutting edge of death metal, and an originator to a certain degree, to walk in and fill those shoes and to make a statement like that, it's huge. I mean, because Chris is a great vocalist. There's no doubt about it. And at one time, he was one of the best. And the guy still deserves respect. I still listen to 6 Feet Under, and I think it's a good band. Was the last album they put out the best thing in the world? In my opinion, the music was awesome, but the vocals, I don't think that they were up to Chris's standards, honestly. And I think that he could have done better. And I'm sure the new record that they put out here shortly, sometime next year, will be, everything we want it to be. And how could it not be with the people in that band? With Jack Owens in there, Marco Petruzella, Jeff Ewell, and the other guy, I can't remember his name, but awesome guitar player from Cannibal Corpse. But that being said, on a side note, my favorite era of Cannibal Corpse is the Pat O'Brien era. I think when Pat joined the band, it was kind of like when they got George. It really elevated things. And I think the high watermark, in my opinion, for Cannibal Corpse were Bloodthirst and The Wretched Spawn. Those two albums, in my opinion, are untouchable. Those were some of the most brutal, ferocious, and somewhat technical albums. I mean, obviously, Frantic Disembowelment, like Jeff Loomis said, walk into a Guitar Center and hear anybody playing that. Pat is such a great guitar player, and it's a shame he's not in the band anymore. We know he had a bunch of legal trouble. He burned his house down with a flamethrower and had some human skulls in there that they didn't know where it came from or whatever, and he wasn't in his right mind. We've all seen the joke of the Red Before Black album cover, with a guy on the front, the slasher, and it says meth before crack. But I mean, it was funny at the time, but whatever. It's not funny because that's a real person, and Pat is an awesome guitar player, and it's cool to see that he's back out there with Exhorder. And hopefully, he can come back to Cannibal, because I have listened to the last two albums, the new one, Chaos Horrific, and I have not listened to the album in its entirety, but I have listened to the singles that they released, and there's some really cool parts in there. And Eric Crouton's a badass in his own right, but in my opinion, that doesn't touch the Pat O'Brien era. And I mean, it's not that it's bad, but that's just my personal preference. And maybe I'm biased because the first show that I ever saw was Cannibal Corpse, Dimmu Borgir, The Haunted, and I think Lamb of God. And this was probably back in 1999. It was one of the first shows, if not the first show that I saw. And I was just a kid. And when Cannibal played, it was so heavy that all the air in the room was displaced. And this club may have held 300 people at the very, very most. Maybe even 200 people were there. It was pretty packed, but just how heavy and gnarly that was. And I remember they played Ecstasy and Decay, and I literally thought I was going to die because I couldn't breathe. It was just so bludgeoningly heavy in such a small room, and people were going crazy. It was awesome. Dimmu Borgir played great too. They were all sick, and they came out in their pajamas with no corpse paint, and they played half their set. That was really, really cool too. They had the lasers going and this and that in this little club. It was awesome. But anyway, Cannibal Corpse. I'm a huge George Fisher fan. I think George was awesome in Monstrosity. The Voodoo Gods thing he did was awesome. And, he did his own album, and he did some stuff. I think that was Jamie Josta from Hatebreed, I believe. But in my opinion, George fit the band better as the band evolved. Because, musicians are going to grow, styles are going to change. People, that's, it's an evolution. And we should always be trying to push ourselves as musicians or artists or professionals or whatever it may be, whatever your medium is. And George just, fit the bill better. And I'm glad that, that they went their separate ways, because some of those 6 Feet Under albums are classic. I mean, I remember listening to Haunted when I was a kid, like nonstop. And was it Warpath? And all the way up to Maximum Violence. As a matter of fact, I did a cover of Feasting on the Blood of the Insane. And those are 3 great albums. And some of their later catalog was good too. But, Cannibal, in my opinion, is just I like it better because it suits what I like more. And it's not to say that the Chris Barnes era was not good, because, it was good. The Bleeding's a classic album, Tomb of the Mutilated. They always end their set with Hammer Smashed Face. And it's kind of like this. This is how I kind of think about it. It's like Van Halen, right? Comparing Cannibal Corpse to Van Halen seems like a stretch, but my point is this. When Van Halen plays with David Lee Roth, they don't play any Sammy Hagar era songs. Now, that argument can be made because Dave can't sing like Sammy. And that's absolutely accurate and correct, and I completely agree with that. But Sammy walking into Van Halen had to sing Dave's songs. Could Sammy sing Dave's songs? Absolutely. Technically, could he sing them better than Dave? Absolutely. But they were Dave's songs nonetheless. And so every time Cannibal Corpse plays, they end with Hammer Smashed Face for a reason, because it is an anthem as far as death metal is concerned. And that being said, that's the one upper hand that Chris Barnes will always have over George, is he can say, hey, bud, you're singing my tunes. I'm not singing yours. And that's true. But I think that George sings Chris's songs better than Chris does. And maybe at a certain point, George sang Chris's songs better than Chris did. I know that's a bold claim. There's so many classic Chris Barnes era tunes, but I think that George fits Cannibal Corpse better than Chris ever did. Now, I'm sure that's going to generate some strong feelings, but it's okay. Let me know in the comments how you feel about that. Because as musicians grow, in my opinion, listening to the everybody's body of work, when I listen to the 6 Feet Under albums, they're okay. They're good. Yeah. And I listen to the Cannibal Corpse albums, Cannibal kept pushing forward, trying to do more. And it got to the point where even a core member like Paul was like, I'm struggling to keep up. Paul Mazurkiewicz took it upon himself to start jamming with the metronome on the Centuries of Torment DVD. It talks all about it. We're never going to be necrophagist, but I want to try to do better. And he got rid of the grips on his drumsticks and all that jazz. That DVD is really awesome. It's old now, but 3 hours of awesome information and really cool stuff. But that's something that you can see in the 6 Feet Under stuff, is Chris Barnes never, in my opinion, never seemed to try to grow as a vocalist. And I don't mean like singing opera songs, coming from singing death metal to singing, opera tunes or whatever, power metal songs. But it kind of did seem over the years that Chris did not maintain, what he once had, where George pushed forwards, and that whole band did. And 6 Feet Under, for all intents and purposes, is Chris Barnes' band, and rightfully so. That's his project. That's his deal. Whatever. Steve Swanson was an awesome guitar player. Alan West was cool. He was in Obituary. Steve Swanson was in Massacre and a couple other bands, I think. And Terry Butler, legendary bass player, was in Death, and Massacre as well. And he's in Obituary now. So it's a small world. And, Chris had Greg Gall playing drums, and got, Kevin Talley from Dying Fetus and Misery Index, who's an awesome drummer. I'm sure he's done other stuff too. I think he tried out for Slayer too. There's video of that on the internet too. I've seen it before. Kevin Talley's audition video for Slayer. And him and Proscriptor from Absu. The now 6 Feet Under's got capable people like in Lord Marco, one of the best drummers in the world. And, Jeff Ewell, great bass player. Jack Owen's there. So maybe it's not so much Chris's vision anymore, where it's more of a shared vision, which is really cool. Where Cannibal Corpse, that was a team. That was a, unified, it was a team. Those were unified people trying to reach a common goal. And look how awesome that was. Yes, in the Centuries of Torment DVD, they talk about how, like, when somebody writes a song or presents it, that idea is completed. Not that it's not subject to change, but, they write their lyrics, this and that. So that way it's like the feel's there. And I think that was the one thing from reading the interviews that I have, from watching the, videos that I have, is that Chris did not want to adapt or take anybody else's constructive criticisms or points of view into what he considered to be his job, to write lyrics and to sing. And that's really cool, because there's a lot of singers that don't write their own lyrics. And there's something to be said for people that do. But just like anything else in life, if you get other people involved and they, have creative input in this and that, and it's valuable information, it's worth listening to. And I think that's what true collaboration is as musicians, is people have a central idea, but then other people get involved and it evolves from its original form into something better. I mean, just imagine if nothing was ever edited or revised, how many books would be unreadable or songs would be unlistenable. And the more people that usually work on something from any different aspect, like arrangements and this and that, it usually turns out pretty cool. I mean, that's like Lars Ulrich's claim to fame, is that, he wasn't the best drummer, but he was a good businessman and he could arrange the songs. And I mean, it speaks for itself. So coming full circle, read Scott Burns' book when it comes out. I'm going to do a review of it too and give my thoughts on it. But, my money's on the Cannibal Corpse with Geroge Fisher any day of the week. And I think that Created to Kill could have been a good record, but Vile really, really stepped it up and, led to the era that I find to be the best. And that's even from Gallery of Suicide to the Wretched Spawn, maybe even Kill. That era of Cannibal's untouchable. And Evisceration Plague was a great album. I mean, that album really, Kill, some people say Kill, but Evisceration Plague really brought Cannibal back. Brought their, like, a resurgence for sure. And it's because that album was so clean. That was Eric Rutan that did a great job, but the playing was good. And I remember getting the DVD with the CD of, like, the making of that. And that was really cool that they did that along the way. And, 6 Feet Under had done live videos too. I remember I have the VHS or the DVD somewhere where they were in, like, Wisconsin, I think in Milwaukee, and they were doing a live show, and the songs were good and they played great. And then there was some, like, behind the scenes stuff where, Chris gets his own bus because he's a rock star, and they're, like, doing some, backhanded comments and, like, talking smack passive aggressively, but whatever. But I mean, it's all for good entertainment. And then that's what this is good entertainment. But yet again, Geroge Fisher all the way. Cannibal Corpse rules. I hope Pat comes back. Chaos Horrific's an okay album. Like I said, I have not listened to the entire thing, but the singles I heard, there were some cool parts, but hopefully the ship hasn't sailed and Cannibal, continues to move forward, and 6 Feet Under's new album's awesome too. But anyway, thank you guys for joining me. We're going to keep the videos coming. Let me know what you think in the comments. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, and give me ideas for more stuff. Here we go. Later.